Okay, so we are going to talk about how to make slides, well, PowerPoint slides, and how to make them effective for in your presentation classes. Okay, so let's here. Okay, so making PowerPoint slides. Pitfalls means mistakes. Okay, so let's try and avoid making bad slides. So tips to be covered in this presentation would be outline, slide structure, fonts, color, background, graphs, spelling and grammar, conclusions, and questions. Okay, so when you make a PowerPoint slide, your slides have very definite parts. So almost all PowerPoint slides should have the following. You should have a title slide and write your name. Okay. The second slide is usually like this, because this is my second slide. It gives you an outline. Okay. And your slide should also have the details of your presentation and have a thank you for listening slide at the end. Now, it's not exactly a rule, but it's always nice to say thank you to your audience after they have listened to you. If you're using pictures, photos must be large enough for everybody to see, and it has to be properly labeled or captioned if it's a photograph. If it's just graphics for decoration, you don't really have to caption it. But if it's a photo, people should know what is going on. Like this is a view from Seto when people went hiking. Now, outline, going back to outline, your first or second slide should be an outline, okay? And then outlines are very good so that you can follow the order of your presentation. So you know where you are at any point. You just check the outline. And everybody can know what's going on before you start speaking. And then usually you put the main points on the slide. Like, for example, here, I don't put any, not a lot of words, but I just put the main points. Now, this slide structure is good, okay? It's very clear. There's only 1 to 2 slides, less than a minute, and it's point form. This is point 1, point 2, point 3, 4 to 5 points per slide. As you can see, this slide has 4 points, okay? And no wordiness. Wordiness means you have too much words, so try to avoid that. Slides are to guide you. They're not for reading purposes. It's not a reading comprehension activity. This is bad structure, okay? Too much information, people have stopped listening to me and have started reading the slide. So that's not a good way, okay? Slide structure good. If you like animation, you can show 1 point at a time, and this will help the audience concentrate on what you are saying. Each point will show up. That it will also prevent audience from just reading and not listening. And it will help you keep your presentation focused. So if you do it 1 point at a time, it actually helps you to focus. Now this is bad slide structure, okay? It is recommended that even if you use animation, don't use distracting animation, okay? That, are too noisy or moving around the screen too much. Do not go overboard. Overboard means too much, okay? And be consistent with what you use. This is a presentation, so usually academic presentation, you need consistency. Fonts, okay? Use at least an 18-point font. Now, you are lucky today, you're looking at this in your computer, but if I put it up on a projector, the fonts will become smaller. And the bigger the room, the smaller the font will look. So 18 point is the minimum, okay? So this is 18 point, this is 20 point, okay? This is Arial. I like Arial, although Times New Roman is also pretty good. But of course, this is an example of bad, well, you can't use fonts that are too small, okay? You should remember to capitalize when and when not needed and avoid using complicated fonts. Okay, complicated fonts are fonts that are hard to read. Now, color. So it's important that your font can be read. So blue font on a white background is fine. Okay, and color can also be used to emphasize a point. So you can reinforce the logic of your structure using color. And then occasionally, don't put too much color in your presentation. This is an example of bad colored font. You cannot see this. There's too many different colors, and this one is cute, but not really easy to read. Okay? So colors are fine to make your presentation fun and easy to read. Too much of it is not good. Now, background. This is a very boring background, but it's a good background. Black and white. Black font, white background. That's standard. That's basic. It's not very fun, but it is easy to read. This is bad. This is a bit too much. So try to find a middle ground between this and this. Okay? So try to find a middle ground. Try to find something that you think is fun and creative, but not too distracting. And that's an example of unnecessary animation. So graphs. If you are going to make a presentation and you have some data that you will be talking about, graphs are always a good way. So graphs rather than charts and words. People can easily understand graphs. Okay? Always put a title in your graph. Okay? Make the data clear, always put a title. This is an example of bad. I mean, there are red balls and blue balls and January, February. We don't know what kind of data it is. This is good. Again, I don't mean boring is good. I just mean that clear is good. You can make this more interesting depending on your creativity. But basically, as long as it's clear, it says the dates, it says it's color, coded, and it has very specific explanation. And this is bad. Actually, it looks nice, right? But the background is bad. The gradation of the colors are wrong. I mean, this is like dark to light, and then sideways to sideways, bottom up. So it's not very organized. Now, here are points to remember on how your graphs could be bad. You don't need grid lines if they are not necessary. Don't use a font that is too small. Colors are not good. Like, they don't mean anything. The title, there's no title. People don't know what the graph is about. And shading is distracting. Okay? If there's too many colors becoming lighter and brighter. Now, be careful of spelling and grammar. Be careful of spelling and grammar. Spelling, look at that. We're missing an L. Avoid the use of repeated words. Okay? This happens quite often for everybody. So be careful. And then you have to see if you have any grammatical errors that you might have made instead of make. So if English is not your first language, please have someone else check your presentation. Now, as students, you have to try and do this by yourself. But if you're doing a presentation in the future as an employee, or maybe if it's a very important graduation presentation, ask someone to check. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you do all the work yourself and just ask somebody to help you check it. And in conclusion, you should have a good conclusion slide. People should know that you're almost at the end of your presentation. People appreciate that. So use an effective and strong closing. Okay? The audience, probably as you are listening to me now, the only thing you will remember is my conclusion. So please try your best to make easy to understand, clear, and very interesting looking slides. So use your conclusion slide to summarize the main points of your presentation and suggest future avenues of research if you're doing a research presentation. So to summarize, use big fonts, use large photos, avoid too much color and distracting animation. Okay? And finally, you should also have a slide that asks questions if you want to ask the audience any questions. So, questions. End your presentation with a simple question slide like this, and it's very big. People at the back room, if you're in a big conference, can easily see, oh, she's welcoming questions. So, invite your audience to ask questions. Provide a visual aid during question period. So, if your audience is asking about graphs, then you go back to the slide with the graphs and then ask them, okay, which point do you want to clarify? And avoid just suddenly ending a presentation because, you know, suddenly you say, okay, thank you, and then you leave. So try to always have a good ending. If you have a good opening, good introduction, you should also have a good ending. Okay? So, and how do we end our presentations? We always say thank you for listening. Okay? It's you can change that to I appreciate your time or any other versions of thank you. But it's always good to say thank you. Okay. And on that note,
This ends the lecture. Thank you for listening.